Welcome to the OneClimate channel again. I'm Anuradha Vitachi from the OneClimate team, and I have here with me my colleague Danielle Nelson.
Hi.
Hi, and also our guest this afternoon, Brendan DeMelle.
How are you?
Brendan, would you like to say something about what you've been working on for the past few years? And then, yes, well, let's start with that.
Sure. I'm a writer and researcher who've focused on the movement of climate skeptics and deniers who have tried to create confusion in the public's mind about the climate science that's behind why we're here in Copenhagen to seal a deal to advance a clean energy future and move away from oil and coal, which are the deniers and skeptics sort of funding source for many of them, and they're sort of defending those interests ahead of the interests of clean technologies.
But all climate deniers and skeptics aren't like this, are they? Because I have a lot of good friends, for instance, who are very, very honourable, decent people, and they have a lot of maybe they've just bought into the confusion. But we all want to be independent-minded people who don't just buy one side or the other. We don't want everything to be so polarised, do we? Well, could you say something about these different kinds of skeptics?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the word skeptic is not necessarily an evil thing. I mean, it's okay to be questioning and to look deeply into issues and to question the status quo. But once you reach a point of certainty in a scientific community, which we have now reached at over 20 years of solid science, thousands of peer-reviewed studies, for people to continue to say that there is a debate on the science is misleading, and that is, in essence, what we portray the skeptics and deniers. They're experts at creating this misleading confusion in the public mind. There are, of course, different levels of skepticism and then outright deniers, those who completely believe that humans have not changed the climate and that carbon dioxide is good for us and we can just keep on burning all the fossil fuels that we have without any risk to our health and to the climate, which is just, even if you just put the climate issue aside for a minute, one of the things I was concerned with that Lord Christopher Monckton, when I interviewed him yesterday, or the other day, he's a key denier of the whole global warming issue. He said to me that coal and oil are as clean as solar and wind.
How does he make this out? I mean, in what way can it possibly be?
I would say that he would be on the farthest end of the spectrum in terms of the most extreme views on this matter. He's also the one who's compared the youth to the Hitler Youth and the Nazis for advocating for clean energy sources. He really is sort of off the page when it comes to this issue. He's also said things in the past that people with AIDS should be quarantined on an island, and that he's a big defender of DDT, that is perfectly safe for us and things. So he has some very extreme views that aren't backed up by real science, and so that's sort of the most extreme.
But how can somebody like that, who doesn't base his views on any kind of real science, who's known to have ridiculous views, how does he get so much press? I mean, is it by saying these inflammatory things? Are the media, are all of us, really partly to blame for constantly giving him airtime?
Sure. I mean, I would say that they force themselves in front of the camera as much as they can to spread their message. And also, like you said, the media have given them oxygen. They have given them a voice in this debate by creating a balance. If you have a leading scientist who comes out and explains the latest knowledge on climate change, then you've got to provide balance to a skeptic, providing a quote to balance out a story, which has unfortunately created confusion in the public's mind because they weigh those two viewpoints equally, when in fact the scientist who's publishing in the peer-reviewed literature, who's been refereed and has to back up his claims, isn't on the same level as a Lord Monckton who can just say whatever he wants and say extreme things, and reporters have inappropriately, in my view, given voice to him, without correcting, or explaining who he really is and what the interests are that he represents.
This is kind of bizarre, this idea of balance, is it? That any two people make up a balance. I mean, it's a bit like saying, my little baby grandchild and I make up a balance in, our views on climate change. And one is 6 months old, and here I am having studied this stuff for years and years. It's completely ridiculous, isn't it? That any two people are equal in knowledge or experience or, wisdom about anything.
Right, I do, and to go back to your original question about the span of science, skeptics versus deniers, like Lord Monckton. There's another example, the S. Fred Singer, who's also here in Copenhagen, attempting to sow doubt in the public's mind about addressing this problem, is a guy who has actually published in peer-reviewed literature. He's just one of the types of deniers and skeptics who are completely outside the field of their expertise. He is a scientist, but he does not study in the atmospheric science and climate science, but yet he has portrayed himself as an expert in this area in order to continue to question, the need to act on global warming, which is another level, in my view, of inappropriate balance that the media has offered a guy like that who is a scientist, but he's not the right kind of scientist to be speaking as an expert on this issue.
And what about the people who are honorably skeptical? I mean, how do you reach them or talk to them? Because they shouldn't be tarred with the same brush. Don't they start to feel sorry for other deniers, even if these other deniers are there for all the wrong reasons?
I would have to say that having studied this for the past 10 years and interviewed many deniers directly or researched who the groups are that fund them and talked to a lot of people who are skeptical about climate change, that I have not found anyone who's actually taken the time to read any of the scientific literature or talk to experts who really remain skeptical, because there's such an overwhelming, proof. The IPCC process is very complete and the consensus is real. So for people to remain skeptical, I would just say it's based on misinformation and disinformation spread by, the likes of the ExxonMobil funded skeptics and deniers.
Right. In fact, yes, rather like my best friend who, said, I don't know, I'm just sitting on the fence, until he read a report from the Met Office, the Meteorological Office, and then he was completely, he was over it. And people just need to actually see some facts, and then the facts speak for themselves, don't they?
Absolutely. And I think people that remain confused haven't taken the time to read actual science or ask real scientists. They're talking and receiving their information from the mainstream media, from talk radio and Fox News in our country is we have outlets that are actively spreading misinformation and lies that a lot of people unfortunately listen to, guys like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh, and take their word as gospel when in fact they are, they have an agenda to push, and it's not one that's based on reality or science.